Welcome to Fl'AwesomeBlossom. My name is Kiki and I am your host. Thank you so much for joining us. If you are a returning bud, then thank you so much for coming back. If you are new to Fl'AwesomeBlossom, then welcome to our little corner of whimsy in the world. Today I want to talk a little bit about something that's a little close to my heart. Food. Why am I talking about the stomach? Well, I'm talking about food, really. Really, that's the topic I'm talking about. But food goes into an organ that's close to my heart, and food feeds my heart. Or does it? Yes, if you eat the right foods. And this is what I'm going to be talking about. We're going to do a series on food, so today's just the scratch of the surface. But I want to tell you a story, and I want you to think about this story, and I want you to think if you have any examples of this in your real life experience. Okay? What the fuck are we doing to food these days in the grocery store? Well, wait a minute. Let me rephrase that. That sentence sounded so not actually what I intended. That sounded like we were doing something to the food in the grocery store. But what I meant to say was, what's up with the food that ends up in the grocery store? Where is this really coming from? What the fuck are we doing to it when it's being grown and distributed? I gotta tell you something pretty frightening that happened. This actually happened last year, but it could just as easily have happened last week. I live in a condo building, and I live in a city. We live on this long block, and we share an alley with, we're on this alley. We are the long section of the alley, and then on the short end here, there's a huge housing complex that also sort of butts up against this alley. And then there are 4 houses directly opposite our condo building. All right, so this alley goes in an L shape, and we've got big buildings all around, but there's a little bit of an empty lot on the corner. Right at the very, very corner, there's an empty lot just of grassiness. And our garbage bins get put out at the end of the alley, and the other housing complex, their garbage bins get put out at the end of that alley. And of course, what does this bring? It brings the critters, right? Garbage brings critters. We have a compost program where I live, and so you're meant to put out your greens bins as well, full of compost material, and that's supposed to go out the morning of pickup. And this is to avoid so very many critters trying to come and eat garbage. But you know, people are people, so sometimes organics end up in the garbage instead of being separated into the compost. And sometimes humans put their garbage out a little earlier than they're supposed to, possibly the night before instead of the morning of. And we have a lot of critters in our neighborhood. Even though I live in a city, we live very close to a green belt, and there are a lot of animals. Like, we're talking coyotes, raccoons. This morning, I saw a gorgeous specimen of a skunk. He was running towards myself and my dogs, which alarmed me because he could clearly see. Well, actually, skunk vision is not so great. However, I'm pretty sure he was aware through other senses. I'm talking, the dogs are there. Actually, one of them shook and his tags jingled. I'm sure that skunk was aware that we were there, and he was running towards us. And that told me he's running away from something that's scarier than a human and 2 dogs, which basically I took to mean there's probably a bear at the very end of that alley that he was running down. So yeah, we have critters in our neighborhood: skunks, raccoons, coyotes, even bears. I did not see the bear this morning. I didn't stick around to investigate. Why is this skunk running towards me? I've also been sprayed by a skunk. So if he's coming towards me, I am not going to stick around to find out why. I'm just going to go, right? Take my dogs and go. So that's what we did. But anyway, getting back to this incident last year, our alley, L-shaped alley, right? Garbage day, organics. And I don't know how it happens, but at the end of this day, there is a bag of apples that get left basically in the alley, but kind of off to the side, a little bit against this house that's actually now abandoned. Like, it had just been, the occupants had just moved out the month before. The point is this: these apples were left in the alley, but kind of butted up against this house in their backyard. And the the bag was the regular bag that it comes in the grocery store. I can't remember the brand exactly, but it's a plastic bag with holes that are about like that big each so that the apples can breathe and not get rotten. And we know, right? We know that apples have a good lasting shelf life, right? They can last about a month on your counter and 2 to 3 months in the fridge. If you have a root cellar, that's even better because it's not quite as cold as the refrigerator temperature. And if you have a proper root cellar, there's not a lot of moisture, and that helps to store your apples. But my point is, in the bag were 8 apples, and they did not appear to be in poor condition. They did not appear to be rotting. They looked perfectly fine. And I saw them that morning when I went off to my job. And then when I came home, they were still there, completely unmolested. The next day, they were still there. The day after. The next day, my husband and I saw a bunch of raccoons in the alley, but none of them touched this bag of apples. None of them. And you gotta wonder, when a trash panda, when a scavenger animal like a raccoon, in a neighborhood where there are raccoons and coyotes, another scavenger animal, crows, seagulls, rats. I mean, what about all the bugs? Nothing was on these apples. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, oh my God, you just watched this bag of apples be in your alley for like a week and you did nothing. I know that. And the reason I did nothing was because I was actually, after day 2, running this weird experiment where I'm like, why? What will it take? Surely the apples might be breaking down now. They're starting to, they're overripe. But I've seen raccoons eat garbage. How rotten does this apple have to be before a raccoon says, nah? And I know that we do live in a city, like I said, and there's a lot of garbage around. It's true. But I don't think that the raccoons had access to a tastier free meal than the easy access of this bag of apples. So my question is, what the fuck is wrong with those apples? I'm sure the person who bought that bag of apples, they probably ate one and was like, this doesn't taste like an apple. Bleh. And it was probably because those apples were either preserved to shit or like they had gone off or whatever. But my point is, when even the critters who are known scavengers, known to eat dead and rancid things and rotten things, when they are not recognizing that as food, that's got to tell us something. Or shouldn't it tell us something? Shouldn't we be questioning that and wondering what's going on in this situation? Like, my husband and I literally saw a family of raccoons when we left on our dog walk. And when we came back, that bag was still there. Yeah, they ran away a little bit, but I'm sure like when we left with our dogs, they had loads of opportunity to come back and get that bag. Tons of opportunity. They had at least 45 minutes of opportunity to do that. Anyway, it makes me just wonder, what are we doing to our food? And we should be asking these questions because we are a population, the world's population is mostly ill. That's right. I said that. Think about yourself. Are you well? How's your body? How's your weight? How's your sleep? How's everything about you right now? Are you checking in? Are you feeling at your optimum? Maybe you are because you're eating whole foods and you don't succumb to the convenient foods. Did you know that between 1970 and 1990, when the average household was grocery shopping, they were buying their groceries. It was kind of split in a 80% ingredients, 20% convenient food. So what do I mean when I say ingredients? What I mean is, let's say tonight's menu is shepherd's pie. Well, the average family would go to the grocery store and buy all of the ingredients needed to go home and make a shepherd's pie. Now, fast forward, and here we are in 2025, and you're buying the pre-made shepherd's pie frozen in the freezer, right? In the freezer section. Or maybe you are lucky enough to go to a place that makes it, like Hopcots, they have their own shepherd's pie and it's delicious. But it's already made for me. And this is the best example I can give you, because it's a little bit more expensive than the box one that you'd buy at the Piggly Wiggly or whatever you got going on for your grocery store. Okay? It's worth it because the ingredients list is half of what's on that box in the grocery store, right? The farm to table situation, that store, just using that particular one as my example, because, I've been doing a lot of shopping there and checking out Fanny the cow. But my point is, when you go to the kind of ma and pa places that make these pre-made meals, they're really doing it old school. Whereas in the grocery store, in the frozen food section, this is produced en masse and it is full of preservatives and chemicals and sugars. And I think if we're to look around North America, I think we can pretty much agree that there's very few North Americans that don't have a sugar addiction. Those are the individuals that are not having processed foods. They are not drinking all of the crazy sodas and whatever. They also probably don't drink alcohol. They're living a very whole food kind of lifestyle, which lends itself to not require a lot of sugar. Like when you're not baking and cooking with sugars, you're not consuming them. And if you are consuming sugars, you're consuming the right kind of sugars. As an example, honey versus high fructose corn syrup, right? Our body can process honey. Our body has a really hard time breaking down and processing the fructose. Like it really does. That's the problem. So, it's all these different choices. But the biggest challenge for most households is time management requires specific kind of choices. It's a lifestyle choice, but it's also based on how much free time you actually have. That's the people who cook have a little bit more free time than the people who don't cook. Sometimes that's by choice. Sometimes it's not. And sometimes you have to just spend your whole day off cooking and meal prepping and doing all that because you just don't have the time during the week. But it's that kind of a sacrifice that you make to have a healthy lifestyle, to have a healthy diet. It's really difficult for people at the poverty line to have anything close to a healthy diet. When you go into the store and a head of cauliflower is $6, and for that same amount of money, you can buy, Kraft dinner. You can buy 12 boxes of Kraft dinner for $6. And that's going to feed your family a lot more than one head of cauliflower. That's just one example, and that's not even the best example. But this is the kind of thing I'm trying to tell you. Our food system needs to have a serious overhaul. And the best way to do that is to get on board with some urban gardening. And if you cannot urban garden, then try and start an urban garden community in your community. Try and find, where's your farm to table? Where is your food coming from? Where are you able to locally source food? And on that same note, are you educated? How can we get the education in order to learn how to forage in the environments that we're in? And I mean that for real, like going out into the forest and like collecting the chanterelle mushrooms so that you can come home and cook them up. They are delicious. But you got to know what mushrooms to pick, don't you? We need to get back to ourselves. We need to get back to nature. And we need to do that across the board. Part of it starts with our diet. We need to get back to a natural diet. We need to get away from these processed foods and really get back to whole foods. And I think When we do that, we're going to see a lot of changes that would happen fairly quickly. First of all, you're going to see physical and mental improvements. And I can't help but wonder how much of the increase in autism and spectrum type disorders are not due to poor diets from basically like 1985 onwards. Just wondering, just the way the food industry sort of changed in that time. But anyway, that's a conversation for another time. This is all the time I am allotting for this discussion today. We're going to pick up some threads. We're going to flush a few things out. But I want you to start thinking about food. I think about food a lot. Like, the fact that I forgot to have my snack right before I recorded this. So I'm hungry. Tengo hambre. That is Spanish for I am hungry. It means I have hunger. And I do. I have hunger. I have a hunger for change. And a hunger for maybe that, apple over there on the counter that's not rotten. that my dogs did sniff and wanted to eat. So yeah, it's food. My precious petals, my darling dahlias, and mes petits choux. I want to leave you with those morsels to chew over. I want you to think about it. Think about your food source. Where are you getting your food from? And are there other options that we can look at? Next time, we're going to talk a little bit more about urban gardening and what the various subcategories of that could be. Until next time, I hope that you are out there living your life in full Fl'awesome Blossom.